Welcome to Master the Beat, from Basic EKG to Life-Saving ACLS. Welcome to episode 2, The Heart Spark, Understanding Electrophysiology. Understanding electrophysiology of the heart is fundamental for healthcare professionals involved in cardiac care, particularly those who analyze EKGs and manage advanced cardiovascular life support. This section will explore the key components of cardiac electrophysiology, including the generation and propagation of electrical impulses, the role of the sinoatrial node, and the significance of the conduction system in the heart's rhythm regulation. Although this is not an exhaustive list, it's important to highlight a few of the most common misconceptions rooted in racial essentialism within cardiovascular medicine. It's been long assumed that African Americans are biologically more prone to hypertension and heart failure. However, recent research emphasizes that environmental, social, and economic factors, rather than race, is the focus when analyzing these health disparities. Another significant issue is the use of race in cardiovascular disease risk prediction models. As Warwick et al. Discuss, including race in these algorithms perpetuates the flawed belief that race is a biological determinant. This practice also leads to biased clinical decisions. Finally, socioeconomic status is a major determinant of cardiovascular outcomes, always more significant than race itself. Research shows that differences in heart disease between Black and white patients are largely attributed to socioeconomic status rather than racial differences. For example, studies found that in low socioeconomic status areas, life expectancy differences between Black and white patients with acute myocardial infarction were minimal, underscoring the importance of socioeconomic factors. These insights remind us that addressing health disparities requires moving beyond racial essentialism and focusing on real determinants of health such as socioeconomic conditions and access to healthcare. Let's start with the cardiac cells overview. In the heart, thousands of specialized cardiac cells work together to maintain its function. These cells are broadly categorized based on their role, either mechanical, driving muscle contraction, or electrical, managing the heart's rhythm. Myocardial cells, also known as working cells, are located in the muscular layer of the heart wall. These cells contain contractile filaments, which are essential for causing muscle contraction and thus enabling the heart to pump blood efficiently and effectively throughout the body. On the other hand, pacemaker cells are found within the heart's electrical conduction system. Unlike myocardial cells, their primary function is not contraction, but rather the spontaneous generation of electrical impulses. These impulses are crucial as they set the pace for the heart's rhythm, ensuring that the heartbeat in a coordinated and efficient manner. Let's begin with understanding characteristics of the cardiac cells. Automaticity. This is the ability to spontaneously generate electrical impulses, and this is only found in pacemaker cells. Excitability. This is the ability to respond to an electrical stimuli, and all cardiac cells share this characteristic. Then we have conductivity, which is the ability to transmit electrical impulses to adjacent cells, also a characteristic of all cardiac cells. And then contractility, which is the ability to cause muscle contraction, is a characteristic of our myocardial or working cells. Did you know that electrical impulses in the heart are generated by the movement of ions, primarily sodium and potassium, across the cardiac cell membrane? So this ionic movement changes the electrical charge inside the cell from its, on the screen you can see the resting state, which is negative, to a depolarized state, positive, and then back to a resting state, negative, during repolarization. Depolarization begins when a cardiac cell is electrically stimulated. During this phase, potassium ions exit the cell while sodium ions enter. Once depolarization is complete, this exchange of ion causes the inside of the cell to become positively charged, which is a critical step in triggering muscle contraction. The depolarization phase is what initiates the heartbeat as the heart muscle contracts in response to the change in electrical charge. After the muscle has contracted, the cell must return to its resting state. a process known as repolarization. During the recovery phase, the sodium-potassium pump plays a crucial role. It actively transports sodium ions out of the cell and brings potassium ions back in, restoring the cell's internal environment to a negative charge. This resetting of the electrical charge prepares the cell for the next depolarization event, ensuring that the heart can continue to beat rhythmically. The precise regulation of electrical impulses and action potentials is crucial for maintaining normal heart rhythm. Disruptions in this process can lead to arrhythmias, which may be identified through EKG analysis. Understanding electrophysiology of the heart allows healthcare providers to interpret EKG findings accurately, diagnose cardiac conditions, and provide effective ACLS interventions. The cardiac conduction system, the heart's electrical activity, originates from the specialized cardiac cells that generate and transmit electrical impulses, initiating coordinated contractions necessary for effective pumping. This conduction system comprises several key structures, each playing a specific role in cardiac electrophysiology. The SA node, or the sinoatrial node, often referred to as the natural pacemaker of the heart, the SA node is located in the right atrium near the superior vena cava. It generates electrical impulses at a regular rate, typically between 60 to 100 beats per minute under normal conditions, setting the pace for the entire heart. The SA node's automaticity allows it to initiate depolarization, leading to the contraction of the atrium. These impulses from the SA node then travel to the AV node, or the atrioventricular node, situated in the lower part of the right atrium. The AV node serves as a critical gatekeeper, slowing down the conduction of electrical impulse to allow the atria time to contract and fill the ventricles with blood. This delay is essential for ensuring that the heart functions effectively. Additionally, the AV node acts as a backup pacemaker, capable of generating impulses at a rate of 40 to 60 beats per minute if the SA node fails. It also protects the ventricles by filtering out excessively rapid impulses from the atria. From the AV node, the electrical impulses travel down the bundle of His. Its location: it extends from the AV node into the intraventricular septum. Its function: the bundle of His connects the AV node to the bundle branches, facilitating the transmission of electrical impulses from the atria to the ventricles. As we just noted, from the AV node, the electrical impulse travels down the bundle of His, which is the pathway connecting the AV node to the bundle branches. These branches divide into the right and left pathways, conducting impulses to their respective ventricles, ensuring synchronized contractions. Finally, the impulse reaches the Purkinje fibers, a network of fibers that spread throughout the ventricles. These fibers ensure a rapid and coordinated contraction of the ventricles, which is crucial for effective blood ejection. In the event of failure of both the SA and AV node, the ventricles can generate their own impulses, albeit at a much slower rate of 20 to 40 beats per minute. As a summary, intrinsic rates of pacemaker cells include the SA node, which is 60 to 100 in our normal pacemaker cell. The AV junction has a rate of 40 to 60 beats per minute, and intrinsic rates for the ventricles are 20 to 40 beats per minute. When interpreting an ECG, understanding the waveforms and intervals is crucial to accurately assessing the heart's electrical activity. The ECG tracings primarily displays three waveforms. These are the ones you need to know for sure: the P wave, the QRS, and the T wave. Each of these waveforms represents a specific phase in the heart's electrical cycle. Starting with the P wave, the P wave reflects an atrial depolarization, the process by which the atria are electrically stimulated to contract. The QRS complex corresponds to the ventricular depolarization, indicating that the electrical stimulation that leads to ventricular contraction. The T wave represents ventricular repolarization, which is the recovery phase after the ventricles have contracted. Occasionally, a U wave might appear following the T wave, though its presence is less common and often debated in clinical significance. In addition to these ECG waveforms, the ECG also shows key segments and intervals such as the PR interval, the PR segment, the ST segment, and the QT interval. These segments and intervals provide important information about the timing and duration of the electrical impulses as they travel through the different parts of the heart. For example, the PR interval measures the time from the start of atrial depolarization to the start of ventricular depolarization, giving insight to the conduction speed through the AV node. As you can see on the screen, there is an isoelectric line indicated by the red dotted line. Between cardiac cycles, the ECG shows a flat, straight line known as the isoelectric line or baseline. I'd like to point out that for me, I like to use the PR intervals baseline right after the P wave to evaluate my J point or my ST segment elevation or depression. We'll talk about that more later. Referring back to that isoelectric line, let's talk about waveform deflection. So a waveform that rises above the baseline is considered to be positive deflection, like the first picture. A waveform that dips below the baseline is recognized as a negative deflection, seen in the second picture. And then we have a waveform that crosses the baseline, both rising above and dipping below, and that is termed the biphasic deflection, seen in the last picture on the screen. During the cardiac cycle, there are specific periods when the heart cells are refractory. This period is represented in the following diagram within the shaded in red and blue area. When describing the refractory period in the cardiac cycle, first we have the absolute refractory period shaded in red in this diagram. In this phase, the cardiac cells have not yet repolarized to their threshold potential, meaning they cannot respond to any stimulus no matter how strong. This period extends from the beginning of the QRS complex up to the peak of the T wave. Essentially, this is a protective mechanism that ensures that the heart muscle has time to contract fully before it can be stimulated again. Following this, we enter the relative refractory period. At this stage, the cardiac cells have partially repolarized and can respond to particularly strong stimulus. This period lasts from the peak of the T wave to its end. It is often referred to as the vulnerable period because of a strong stimulus, for example, a PVC coming in during this time could disrupt the normal pacemaker activity and potentially cause arrhythmias. Finally, there is the supernormal period occurring near the end of the T wave. Here the cardiac cells have almost completely repolarized and are even more responsive to stimuli, including those that are weaker than usual. This period represents a highly sensitive time when a minimal stimulus, like even a PAC, could trigger an antiarrhythmic response. When observing ECG graph paper, you notice that there are horizontal lines in a structure, which is where time measurement is done. The horizontal axis of the ECG paper represents time, with each small square corresponding to 0.04 seconds. On the paper, 5 small squares make up a larger square, which represents 0.20 seconds. When you're observing the ECG graph paper, you notice that there's vertical lines. This is where we do voltage measurement. The vertical axis represents the amplitude or voltage of the electrical signals. Each small square vertically corresponds to 1 millimeter, which is equivalent to 0.1 millivolts of electrical potential. This measurement helps in assessing the height of waveforms. For example, if the QRS complex extends 16 small squares above the baseline, this corresponds to a voltage of 16 millimeters. At Novamind LLC, our core values are firmly aligned with the American Medical Association's policies, which assert that there is no biological evidence of race and it is a social construct. We adhere to the AMA policies that advocate for the elimination of race as a proxy for ancestry, genetics, and biology in medical education, research, and clinical practice. This is why Novamind sets itself apart as the pioneer in health equity education and professional development through our unwavering commitment to these principles. Every course we create is designed to identify and challenge the ingrained biases that have historically influenced and continue to affect healthcare today. Our approach is not just about delivering content, it's about transforming, understanding, and establishing new guidelines for educating healthcare professionals. And that concludes our exploration of the heart's electrical system in episode 2 of Master the Beat from Basic EKG to Life-Saving ACLS. In our next episode, we'll dive into the rhythm strip analysis, waveform unveiled, mastering intervals and segments. We start breaking down the patterns and what they mean in your patient's heart. This is where everything starts to come together and your ability to read and respond to EKGs will truly come to life. So stay tuned and remember, mastering the heart's electrical system is the key to saving lives. See you at the next episode. Don't forget to like, follow, and comment with any questions or requests. Also, pause to read for the next few slides on AMA policies that we support and references used in this video.